Good morning. I'd first like to thank Naz and Emily for having me and putting on such a wonderful day. And I'd like to thank everyone in the audience for coming today and as a result participating in what, at least for me, has undeniably become one of the most important movements of our time. I'm really excited to be here. I think forums like this one, a meeting of minds, a meeting of the mouth in the most literal sense, are where all the best ideas start. And while we can only take a guess as to what the future of food and our food system holds, from the caliber of today's speakers, I'm pretty confident that our food system and food at large in this country is in pretty good hands. So who am I and why am I here today? My name is Adam Eskin, and I'm the founder of Dig In. For those of you that haven't yet dined with us, we own and operate 11 restaurants here in New York, and another half dozen on the way this year as between New York and some new fun markets like Boston. In our restaurants, we serve seasonal American food, mostly vegetables, sourced directly from our farmers and partners, as close to home as possible. Now, historically, food has played a fundamental role in building community and culture, and one of the reasons that we all, as a team, show up to work every day is because we're trying to do our part in making sure that that continues. Rather than go on specifically about what we do at Dig In, who I am, I thought it would be more interesting to read you an email that landed in my inbox about a month or so ago from two of my amazing colleagues, one of which is here today. Hi, Allie. So here goes. Dear Adam, we're pretty sure you'll agree that root vegetables get a bad rap. By the time February rolls around, farmers' markets are filled with round and starchy root vegetables. And sadly, leafy greens are few and far between, and those juicy tomatoes and summer eggplants, forget about it. But little attention is paid to how patiently root vegetables wait in the fall, coolly ready for their moment to shine. After much deliberation and a few inappropriate conversations, we have come to believe that we have unearthed your spirit vegetable. You are, without a doubt, a sweet potato. But before you feel the same sadness that most shunned root vegetables must experience, please hear us out. First, sweet potatoes produce more pounds of food per acre than any other cultivated plant. To us, you are one of the most efficient, meticulous individuals we know, yada, yada. Whether it's racing next door, preparing for a new restaurant in Boston, or otherwise, you're moving at super speeds to get things done. Second, sweet potatoes thrive in a loose, sandy soil, and the act of harvesting them is a favorite for many. Starting at one end of the row, you must crawl along and dig up each and every potato. The process leaves your hands, knees, and nails miserably dirty. But you have to harvest each one individually. Sorry. And similarly, the care and attention that you put into each restaurant, each employee, and each idea at Dig In is so very sweet potato. Third and finally, the sweet potato is known for its creamy and consistent flesh. What lies below the surface is what defines this most complex carbohydrate. No matter what stress you're under, what mood you're in, or what kind of day you're having, you give us each the same open, caring version of yourself. And while summer is looming ahead, Adam, please don't sweat it. We don't think there's a better boss than the sweet potato. Regards, Allie and Taylor. So I share this with you as a fun, silly insight into the somewhat weird and wonderful, or at least I think wonderful world at our company. And while I won't speak to the obvious overstatements regarding me and my contribution, I can tell you that it landed in my inbox just in time for year-end reviews, so you can connect those dots. All kidding aside, it's a pretty poignant reminder for me and for us what a passionate, vegetable-loving bunch we are. And while most other companies, maybe they align with Spirit Color, Spirit Animal, or even Spirit Furniture, we're stuck pretty hard on our vegetable trip. So, as many of us know in this room, a city like New York can provide a pretty hectic backdrop. It's a place where getting swept up by the bustle is all too easy, and you realize it's been a minute or a month before you've gone on a hike or a bike ride or even called your mom. By living seasonally, an existence clearly defined by the coming and going of the farmers markets in seasonal produce and vegetables, I personally have found an appreciation, or a greater appreciation, for some of the smaller and little things in life. For me, vegetables are a tangible connection to people, places, and life, or at least life as it should be. And as a result, for us, the question is not if vegetables or even which ones, but rather, why vegetables and why now? Apropos of that letter, I happily accept and acknowledge the mighty sweet potato is my spirit vegetable. God only knows that I've eaten my fair share over the past decade. But admittedly, this has not always been the case. My love affair with vegetables was epiphanic, kind of like falling asleep. It was slow at first, and then it seemed to happen all at once. I was a chubby kid growing up, a late bloomer, if you will, and like a lot of chubby teens, with a little bit of a chip on the old shoulder, I set out on what I thought was a path to better health. And what I mean by better health was maybe some more attention from the girls at recess, or not getting picked so late in the dodgeball draft. And while my intentions were right, I visited all the wrong landmarks. Protein shakes and protein bars, muscle milk, egg whites, the list goes on and on. For exercise, at the time, it was the heavier the weights, the better. And this is my story. I think there was a point in time where what you bench actually became a part of my vernacular, as embarrassing that is to admit. But looking back through it, there were two defining and admittedly somewhat cliched moments that finally broke this muscle-bound cycle. So this is a quote from Michael Pollan. Daily, our eating turns nature into culture, transforming the body of the world into our bodies and minds. So the first was reading one of Michael's books, The Omnivore's Dilemma. If you haven't already read it, consider it a must-read. And while you're at it, another one of his, In Defense of Food, the manifesto that birthed the very basic premise upon which our company and this movement, at least in my opinion, is built. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. The second happened about 5 years ago when I first visited one of our farms in New Jersey. It was June, pretty hot, right in the middle of asparagus season. I still remember these guys crawling around the fields, hands and knees, picking each spear one at a time. It really looked like backbreaking work. That simple scene changed the way I think about food forever in terms of waste, working conditions, fair wages, seasonality, and availability of our food on a local, regional, and national level. Of course, for me, in my mind, health was still a factor, but my attention shifted away from counting calories or grams of protein or otherwise, and towards the quality and diversity of real whole foods. Seeing the fragility of a single spear of asparagus pop out of a small amount of soil, I also became far more concerned about the environment. And while I'm not here to soapbox about global warming, it's true that after cars, the current food system uses more fossil fuel than any other sector of the economy. Chemical fertilizers, pesticides, farm machinery, packaging, transportation associated with commercial agriculture has increased the amount of greenhouse gases emitted from the food system by a significant order of magnitude. And sitting here in 2016 in New York, this week notwithstanding, with temperatures rising and weather volatility going a bit haywire, it seems that we found ourselves in a little bit of a pickle. But by promoting rural and regional economies, both in New York and across the country, those folks that were on their hands and knees picking and pulling that asparagus by hand, we can have a pretty meaningful impact on the food system and the environment at large. Before I go on to explain why I think vegetables are the next food revolution, we need to call on our culinary forefathers to better understand from where we've come. Traditional American agriculture, we're talking about over 100 years ago, relied on crop diversity and photosynthesis to replenish the land, ward off pests and diseases, and feed local communities. Apart from the middle of winter, walking down the road, you'd see a checkerboard of colorful fields, pastures, vegetables, hay, maybe even an orchard, all as part of the same family farm. Farms grew as much product as their local community needed. Few, if any, struggled for food. Little waste existed, and a fair price was paid. But after the war, government priorities shifted. Refueling a food-starved system was top of the agenda. Federal agricultural policies became less about supporting individual farmers and more about boosting yields for a handful of commodity crops, as many of you know, most notably soy and corn. The need for more food and a stronger economy was first and foremost enabled by fertilizers and pesticides made from cheap fossil fuels. And more specifically, chemicals like nitrate and phosphate that were used to build bombs during the war and were in ample supply were repurposed and came to be known today as things like Roundup and other industrial pesticides and so forth. But these tremendous increases in productivity actually ended up driving down the prices of crops over time. Farmers were forced to produce more at lower and lower prices just to break even, and the cycle continued. Essentially, the administration's cheap food policies worked too well, to the point that today, each American farmer produces enough food to feed 155 people. In 1960, that number was 26. So about a six-fold increase, and if we think back 100 years ago, it was probably 4, 6, or 8, a single family. Who's hungry? Okay, so naturally, this deep depression in the Farm Belt, this led to a deep depression in the Farm Belt and an increase in the kinds of dirt-cheap, industrially produced foods that we know and have today. A lot of these foods, sweetened drinks, factory farm meats, and the like, not coincidentally, are all derivatives in some form or another of corn and soy. To give credit where credit's due, though, these policies, in my opinion, came from a good place in a time where the need for fast, cheap food was the most important thing on the agenda. And the system achieved what it was designed to do. It fed millions of people for a very, very, very long time. Now, considering the turbulent political history of our domestic food system, worrying about our next meal as little as we do is quite dreamy. I think we can all acknowledge that we are incredibly lucky. It's easy to forget that having tons of affordable food at our literal fingertips is still considered a privilege in many countries today. The sad irony, of course, is that our pendulum of affordability has swung so far to the left that Americans are now spending less than we ever have on food. As little as 10% of our wages, and that's compared to 30% back in the days of our grandparents and the parents that came before them. Now, the history is well documented, nothing new, but it was on a recent holiday with my wife in Europe where I actually realized that other food systems over the past 30, 40, 50 years had not changed in the same tune as ours. Mass production was not the norm everywhere, and is not the norm everywhere, and family farms can still make it. And I saw that what we were trying to achieve at Dig In on a larger scale, with vegetables at the helm, involves just as much regression as it does progression. We were eating at this restaurant inside the Roman walls. It was kind of like one of those seedy-ish places that you might find in Little Italy. You may or may not go inside, plenty of marble. The same four brothers had run it for the past 50 years or so. And the menu had been created from the land. So they had lemons, they had tomatoes, they had eggplants, all growing locally on their property. Needless to say, the food was insane. Harvested that morning, really incredible. While we were eating, one of the brothers had learned that I was in the food business. And so roughly translated, he had said to me they had a good run over the past 50 or so years. Him and his brothers were ready to hang up the skates, and would I be interested in buying their restaurant? Being, the New York entrepreneur that I am, I said, sure, how much? And he responded, $20 million US. Paid my check, shook his hand, left before it became the most expensive bolognese of my life. And while this price was a joke, maybe not, for me it came at least in part from a place where food is valued and it's elevated to a status that's synonymous with real culture. After this trip, it became more apparent that a social shift in New York and nationally was on the way. At Dig In, vegetables make up 60 to 70% of what we do. Last year alone, we did 360,000 sweet potatoes, 180,000 pounds of Brussels sprouts, and so forth. I think we've arrived at a place now where vegetables are transitioning from the soggy sides we ate as kids or fed under the table to our dogs, to the main affair, led by a wave of change makers like Pollen, Bitten, Alice Waters. We are seeing tons of content being published about our food system, what's broken, what's not, and what we need to do about it, both from a policy perspective and otherwise. Pockets of the country are probably more interested in this topic than others, but on average, I believe as consumers we're becoming more educated about what we are eating. Social media is disseminating and popularizing this information at a rate of knots, to the point where eating kale, going to yoga, and other activities have become quite cool. This new breed of educated plant lover is not only motivated by ethical, environmental, or even health concerns, though those reasons do, of course, come into play, but just as motivated by culinary ones. Simply put, the once meat-obsessed populace is realizing that vegetables can actually taste good. Fruits and vegetables are being held in much higher regard, often dominating menus. Meat proteins are still included, but their role is changing to become more of a complement, with items like cauliflower taking center stage as the new steak on the center of the plate. Just the other day, I had my first cheeseburger in some time, minus the burger and the cheese, from By Chloe, which had just joined the ranks alongside Superiority Burger, Dirt Candy, and others. Leaders on the culinary scene looking to change the reputation of vegetables, and in so doing, the food game at large. Chefs at these places are seriously talented, using methods like searing, charring, smoking, etc. Now, the same techniques that they apply to meats or other proteins to achieve a variety of incredible flavors, enchanting even the most ardent carnivore. And with this culinary excellence has come a movement where chefs are celebrities. Compared to the days where Julia Child was media's golden girl, through shows, cookbooks, and social media, we're now welcoming hundreds of chefs into our homes, seems like every day. But instead of buttercream frosting in the spotlight, chefs like Dan Barber, Alice Waters, April Bloomfield, pioneering healthful cooking in creative root-to-stem dishes. Chefs are quite literally modern-day tastemakers, deciding what lands in their menus and, in turn, what we as a population consume. So what does this all mean? Vegetables are beneficial to our health, the environment, and the communities that grow them. They are a grounding, nourishing force in what's now a very fast-moving world. More than that, their prevalence in the food scene is a sign. Cultural realignment is happening on so many levels. Culinary influencers are thriving in an information age where educated consumers want more from their next meal. Now more than ever, people are seeking food with a story, and eating vegetables is truly an exploratory experience. This movement gives a whole new meaning to the old adage, eat your vegetables, because soon, I suspect we won't really have a choice. As the founder of Dig In, I get profound enjoyment out of seeing this movement magnify and grow every day, and I just feel lucky to be a part of it. And as a spiritual sweet potato, I may have never been so popular. Thanks for listening.